anyone else watching the world go to ruins while feeling like they're trying to fix the ruins of their own life? Like, there's heat waves across Europe as we creep ever closer to environmental tipping points. Fascism is back in vogue, as is genocide and war. And I'm here watching my 100th morning reset routine. And look, I know I'm not the only one, because that content is popular. At the beginning of this year, I made a video talking about all of the different careers and identities that I've tried to have. But I could have just as easily talked about all of the different wellness techniques that I've tried over the years. There's yoga and meditation, breathwork, tarot, multiple kinds of therapy, hard routines, soft routines, working till I burn out, not working at all, not asking for help, asking for help, and of course watching every self-help video on YouTube. And it struck me that I'm surrounded by what feels like ruins. Just as I've got all of these, the remnants of all of these old identities, I've also got the remnants of all of these attempts to be happy, I guess. The imagery didn't actually occur to me by myself. I've been reading this book, At Work in the Ruins. Wait, it's a long-ass title. Finding Our Place in the Time of Science, Climate Change, Pandemics and All the Other Emergencies by Dougald Hine. I feel like it's a pretty self-explanatory title, but it's essentially about the end of the world as we know it. And it got me thinking a lot about how we deal with all kinds of ruins, endings, the things left over when we realised we weren't actually going in the right direction. And I think our collective interest in self-care and self-help, or I'll at least talk for myself, my own interest, it could be dismissed as rampant individualism. And there is some truth in that. But I think caring for ourselves and caring for the earth aren't necessarily so separate. If we drive ourselves to burnout by trying to be uber productive humans, then we'll expect the same of the world, and that leads to exploitation and overconsumption. This book got me wondering about how can ideas about how to act at the end of the world apply to ourselves, and how can that then circle back and help ease the suffering of living through this time at the end of the world. At the end of the book, Dougald suggests 4 kinds of works that we can do in the ruins: salvaging the good, mourning the good that we can't take with us, and looking back to obsolete practices that could still help us. But I found this one the most interesting. The 3rd kind of work involves discernment. Notice the things within our ways of living that were never as good as we told ourselves they were, and the chance we are being given to walk away from these. It is the strange gift of a time of endings to bring into view the gap between the things we are trying to do and the ways we went about doing them around here lately. Make use of this gift. There are cracks appearing in the fantasies of modernity. The things that we thought were good or useful or desirable are showing themselves to be increasingly harmful. So there were 3 themes in Dougald's book that I could really see the parallels between how we treat the world and how we treat ourselves. Living in a fish tank, the pitfall of progress, and avoiding death. Describing the living world as if it were a technological and economic system ends in the attempt to make the world into a planetary fish tank, in which a human ingenuity, beefed up with AI number crunching, maintains a livable ecological and social environment through constant monitoring and control. Throughout the book, Dougald refers to this image of the fish tank, and he uses this to refer to the drive in science to know everything about our environment, both local ecosystems and the global atmosphere. So many politicians are counting on us reaching this fish tank state, perhaps through geoengineering or through finding the perfect amount of carbon emissions versus carbon sequestration in the hope to allow our lives to continue as normal without burning entirely to a crisp, or at least without the rich people burning to a crisp. And just in case there's any doubt, to be clear, neither of these things are going to work, and we also are not going to reach a stage where we understand the planet and all of its life systems well enough to be able to control it and monitor it like a fish tank. It's funny because when I read about this idea of the fish tank, it actually made me think about how I tried to turn myself and my life into a fish tank. Maybe it's the autism in me, but I've always been a little bit obsessed with optimizing my life, whether it was making an Excel spreadsheet of my New Year's resolutions from the age of 13 or creating yet another morning routine that's really going to fix my life this time. I often treat myself like a
scientifically controlled environment. If I just know enough data about how I work, if I just get the right inputs and outputs, if I can just optimize the conditions, then finally everything will be perfect and I will be happy. Which is why this quote hit me really quite hard, even though Dougald was actually talking about a project of modelling 7,000 grassland habitats. This extensive modelling was a drive to remake the world into a thing that needs knowing in this way, the object of our total management, and to make ourselves into a life support system for a planet that, however damaged, still knows how to live. I try to make myself into an object of total management, to create life support systems for my body and mind that, however damaged, do still know how to live. Our society has a worrying drive towards optimization. I mean, just look at the popularity of all this self-help, productivity hacks, reset routines, and then compare that mentality to how politicians are playing Jenga with carbon emissions and net zero goals. I think that dismantling the ideology of the fish tank within ourselves is actually so key to how we conceptualize sustainability. Maybe it's not about maintaining or sustaining a perfect, optimized way of life. Maybe it's about regeneration and trusting these bodies, the earth or our human bodies, still know how to live. I am, and I think I always will be, someone who really loves structure and routine and planning and goals, but I can try to remember that the world is not a problem to be solved. Modernity is post-apocalyptic. It is born out of devastation, the destruction of the fabric of the living world and the destruction of the weave of culture. Modernity is also antibiotics and anaesthetic dentistry and the mother who can almost take for granted that she will survive childbirth. We're used to thinking that the world is better today than it's ever been before, but the progress that we idolise isn't actually as good as we tell ourselves. To take one example, there's the assumption that the latest technology is always the best, that companies should have free rein to innovate no matter the cost, that if it's new and clever that we have to use it, and that we have to make everything easier and shinier, quicker and more convenient. But I think there's one major bit of progress at the moment that is really cracking that idea and that ideology, and that's AI. The proliferation of AI across the internet is proving unpopular. People have a quite fair sense that text, images, videos created out by code rehashing existing work lacks integrity, humanity even. AI is proving to be bad for society, for truth and democracy. It's bad for the environment, consuming disproportionate amounts of electricity and water. Not only that, so much of modern life and progress lures us in with the promise that it will make our lives easier and better, but it's not actually making us any happier. Making art at a click of a button does not make us happy. It doesn't even count as art, and I'm not going to have this debate. No, AI art does not count. But it's not just AI. There are so many new and modern things that, yes, do offer us some advantages, but also take us away from the work that makes us feel human and grounded. Social media takes us away from the hard work of relationships. Plastic-wrapped, shop-bought vegetables take us away from working with the land that sustains us. As Dougald puts it, to be a grown-up, it seems to me, is to live alert to consequences, to know the cost of your living. It is hard to be a grown-up in the world that we have made. The cost is almost unbearable. No wonder our culture seems built to keep us distracted, to postpone the encounter with consequences until the last possible moment. We've got to stop letting ourselves be distracted by all the new shiny things that don't actually make us feel that much better, and instead just keep in touch with what makes us human. Much of the ritual and story by which humans have found their bearings in the world has at its heart the cultivation of awareness and gratitude for the deaths of the animals and plants that give us life. Either we make our lives a part of a cycle of gift, or we become an engine of depletion. The fossil economy breaks the possibility of such a cycle. We're a society that has become obsessed with not ending. Even though all of environmental science is telling us that our way of life is extremely destructive and leading us to the sixth mass extinction, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. Fossil fuels allow us to bludgeon through planetary boundaries, live lifestyles that use up thousands of deaths. And it makes us think that society can go on like this forever. Returning to the even cycle of life and death allows us to live within the boundaries of the gift of life. We're a society that has become obsessed with not dying. While I'm more of a fan of self-help that's based on like mental wellness and living sustainably and that kind of thing, I'm aware of how much content there is about skincare, fitness for the sake of fitness, and even crazy health hacks out there that will make you live forever. That desire for youth, obsessive desire, is the attempt to deny our mortality at the end of the day. And look, this is going to make me sound like every self-help video out there, but it really does come down to gratitude when it comes to being happy with your life. And being aware of the fact that you're going to die, perhaps counterintuitively, is actually a really big part of that. People who are currently reaping the benefits of modernity wake up every day expecting to live. As in, we have the medicine, the food, the shelter to almost guarantee our survival. While that expectation is kind of a good thing because we should have right to life and everything, it does also destroy gratitude. The alternative is not that you wake up expecting to die, it is that you might wake up with a sense of your life as a gift, something mysteriously good. Not an entitlement or a reward for living right, but a source of wonder and an occasion for gratitude. Surrender to the mystery, not the certainty. Set a place at the table for the stranger who might arrive at your door, even now, even in a world which has forgotten so much about hospitality. An important consideration when working in the ruins, whether it is the ruins of the world or the ruins of the self, is agency. One of the greatest myths that modernity teaches us is that we have control over our destiny. Just take a look at manifestation and self-made billionaires. Of course, we do have control to an extent, but in reality, we only can point in a direction. We're at the beginning of the next 1,000 years, because that's how long it takes for old growth forests to return, for the mother trees to come up again. Now, it's a very good idea to try to plant those trees, but it's not just us that gets to decide whether there will be a forest in 1,000 years' time. It's the animals that munch their leaves, the weather, the trees themselves. We have to make sure that we are making space for other beings and forces in our thinking to leave a place free at the table. I've been hoping for the last 10 years that if I did enough therapy or meditation or just all of the things right, that I would reach this point of even, consistent, stable contentment. Not even happy, just contentment. I can, of course, implement things that help me stay well and happy, but at the end of the day, life events, circumstances, my body, my brain, all of those things can render those plans useless in a moment. I'm probably never going to stop having ruins. The good news is that humans have been building from ruins for millennia.